In 1565, the most powerful military force on earth arrived in Malta with somewhere between 30,000 and 48,000 men, a formidable fleet, and every intention of finishing the job. They left 4 months later, having not finished the job. In 1798, Napoleon arrived with 29,000 men. The island surrendered in 2 days. Same island. Roughly the same numbers. Completely opposite outcome. And the explanation for that difference is not really a military story. It is a story about what happens to a small place that has been occupied by absolutely everyone, for approximately 2,600 years, and has somehow remained itself throughout. The list of people who have ruled Malta reads like a roll call of Mediterranean ambition. The Phoenicians. The Romans. The Byzantines? Then, in 870 AD, the Arabs, who arrived from what is now Tunisia, destroyed the main fortress, looted what was worth looting, and according to one Arab historian, left the island almost entirely depopulated. They then resettled it around 1048 with a Muslim community. The Normans arrived in 1091. 150 years later, a document from 1240 records 836 Muslim families on the island and 250 Christian ones. The expulsion of the Muslim population is dated to 1249. What happened in those 9 years between 1240 and 1249 is not clearly documented. It simply happened, and Malta moved on. Then the Spanish. The Aragonese? Then in 1530, Holy Roman Emperor Charles V handed the island to the Knights of St. John, a crusading military order that had already been expelled from Jerusalem, then Cyprus, then Rhodes. Malta was their third consolation prize. Their own emissaries described it as barren, poorly fortified, and strategically inconvenient. 35 years later, they would build one of the most beautiful fortified cities in Europe on it. People changed their minds. It is also almost entirely unknown outside Malta, which is an interesting omission given what was at stake. Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent had already taken Rhodes from the Knights in 1522. His military machine had rarely failed. He sent somewhere between 30,000 and 48,000 men, every estimate dwarfs the defending force, along with one of the most capable naval fleets in the world. The objective was to eliminate the Hospitaller presence in the Mediterranean permanently. The Knights, under Grand Master Jean Parisot de la Valette, had approximately 500 of their own men. The rest of the defending force was Maltese soldiers and militia. Fort St. Elmo, at the harbour entrance, fell after a month. Every defender inside was killed. La Valette's response was to execute his Ottoman prisoners and fire their heads from cannons across the harbour at the enemy. This was not a man given to negotiation. The siege continued through the Maltese summer, 35 to 40 degree heat, constant bombardment, disease spreading through both camps. The Ottomans lost an estimated 20,000 to 30,000 men. The defenders lost the majority of their fighting force. On the 7th of September 1565, a relief force arrived from Sicily. The Ottomans withdrew. La Valette immediately began building a new fortified city on the peninsula above the harbour. Designed from scratch, on a grid, as a military installation first and a city second. It took 15 years. He named it Valletta. Subtle he was not. It remains the capital of Malta today, and the smallest capital city in the European Union. Every occupier brought something. A language. A religion. An agricultural technique. An architectural style. The Maltese absorbed all of it and remained Maltese. Consider the language. The Maltese language is the only Semitic language in Europe. Its structure is Arabic, written in a Latin script, with layers of Sicilian, Italian, and English built on top. Every occupation left a deposit, and the language holds all of them simultaneously. But here is the detail that stops people. The Arabic word for God is Allah. The Maltese word for God is Allah. The Arabic term for the Islamic period of fasting is Ramadan. The Maltese word for the Christian period of Lent is Randan. The most Catholic country in Europe prays to God using an Arabic word and marks its most sacred Christian fast with an Arabic name. Nobody finds this strange. Nobody is supposed to find it strange. That is the mechanism working exactly as it always has. The Knights brought counter-Reformation Catholicism and Baroque architecture. The magnificent churches that define the Maltese landscape today were built by an order of crusading knights as instruments of the Tridentine program, the church made permanent in stone, the institution made unmissable. The Maltese absorbed the churches and made them their own. The festas. The patron saints. The parish rivalries conducted with a competitive intensity that would make a football ultras group feel self-conscious. None of that came from the Knights. The Knights provided the buildings. The Maltese provided everything that happens inside them. Every ruler thought they were shaping Malta. What they were actually doing was adding another layer to something that was already there and would still be there after they left. Ferdinand von Humpeist, a German diplomat elected to the role 11 months earlier, who had spent his career in Vienna and spoke fluent Maltese, which was apparently considered a qualification, had ignored months of warnings about the French fleet assembling at Toulon. He appears to have genuinely believed Napoleon was heading somewhere else. He was not entirely wrong. Napoleon was heading to Egypt. Malta was just a stop on the way. The Maltese response to this was instructive. They did not accept the French either. Within 3 months of the surrender, they organized their own uprising, drove the French garrison into Valletta, and besieged them for 2 years. Without the Knights, 10,000 Maltese irregulars, no professional military support, holding the capital under siege until the British arrived and the French surrendered. The absorption mechanism had not failed. The Knights had simply stopped being part of it. They had arrived as a military force with a purpose. They left as an aristocratic institution that had outlived its function. Malta noticed the difference. The Knights of St. John still exist. They are headquartered in Rome, have formal diplomatic relations with 114 countries, issue their own passports, and admit members by invitation only. They have not had any actual territory since 1798, but that has not stopped them. They absorbed their own irrelevance and kept going. Perhaps they learned something from the island after all. Part 2 will ask whether the same mechanism that outlasted every previous occupier is still operating in Malta today, and if so, what exactly it is absorbing now. In the meantime, the Maltese word for God is Arabic. The Maltese word for Lent is Arabic. The Baroque churches were built by French and Spanish crusaders. The capital is named after a man who fired prisoners' heads from cannons. And somehow all of this adds up to one of the most coherent national identities in Europe. How does that happen?